The Kissing Booth. Chapter 10. When my lips touched his, he tasted of spearmint and cotton candy, which wasn't as bad as it might sound. I kissed him back and forgot everything for a moment. Forgot this was a kissing booth. Forgot we were in public. Forgot that it was Noah, who I was supposed to hate so much for being so interfering. For a second, I even forgot that this was my first kiss. I just kissed him back, following his lead, and when I felt his tongue touch the tip of mine, I opened my mouth a little wider, letting him deepen the kiss. I kissed him back harder. I didn't have the slightest clue what I was doing. I just followed his lead. We broke apart at the same time, but he stayed there, his forehead resting on mine. Both of us were breathing hard. "Damn," he said. A smirk played at the corners of his lips, and his eyes sparkled at me. I couldn't tell if that was a good damn or a damn I just kissed my little brother's best friend. "Yeah," I whispered back, anyway, making him chuckle. There were a few wolf whistles from the crowd. I barely noticed them. Someone tapped my shoulder, making me jump. I'll take over now if you want," said Karen, giving me a knowing smile. Still feeling dazed from the kiss, I nodded and stood up, letting her take my place. I walked out of the booth slowly, feeling totally surreal. This must have been a dream. I did not just make out with Noah Flynn, and not in front of so many people. After the almost stripping not so long ago, that probably didn't do much for my reputation. I fought the urge to bury my head in my hands. My lips felt all tingly, in a good way though. It was weird. I could still taste spearmint and cotton candy, and feel his slightly scratchy stubble on my cheek. It was surreal. I'd had my first kiss, and it hadn't been any old kiss, not a peck on the lips or anything like that. More like a full-on makeout session. The chances of me having my first kiss on a kissing booth with Noah Flynn were so slim. I was starting to think that it had never happened. See? That wasn't so bad. I jumped at Lee's voice. "What?" he asked, oblivious, looking up from his cell phone. I think I just made out with your brother," I stammered quietly, disbelievingly. His eyebrows shot up. How the hell did I miss that? Not that I wanted to see it. You and my brother? Weird. Just plain weird. But seriously, how did I not notice that? Are you texting Rachel? Yeah, that's why you missed it. He laughed and shook his head at me. Okay, you were right. Hey, would you mind if I took Rachel to the movies tonight after the carnival's over? Sure, I said. No problem. I can find another ride. Maybe your dad can take you. He's brought Brad, right? Yeah, they're here somewhere. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, I was surrounded. There were at least a dozen girls wanting to know if it was true. Had I just made out with Flynn at the kissing booth? Like, seriously? They wanted every last detail. With a sigh, I explained that Karen had bailed. Yes, there was tongue. What? No. I didn't know if I liked him that way or not. Maybe. I don't know. And yeah, it had been my first kiss. They were all undeniably jealous, of course, but they wanted to know if I was getting together with Flynn. Of course, none of them really wanted Flynn to be taken. They wanted a single Flynn they could flirt with and drool over, probably at the same time. But everybody wanted to know. Word traveled fast, texts, phone calls, and given that everyone was at the carnival anyway, my popularity had just shot through the roof, and I was helplessly lost. Some sophomore kids walked past, and a girl pointed at me. That's the one who made out with Flynn. At first I grimaced, but then again, there were worse things to be known for. Do you want to be with him? Lee asked when we were finally alone. after the carnival had finished. The student council and a few others were still clearing up their booths and counting the cash. I mean, I thought you were over him. I am. I don't know. It's Noah, you know? Not really. For one thing, he's my brother. For another, I'm a guy. I guess, but you know what I mean. I kind of hate him. I kind of like him. Well, if you are not sure, then don't do anything. Should you talk to him or something? I ignored the last part. I don't know what I would... I don't know that I would anyway. If I did get together with him, which is totally unlikely anyway, and it ended messily, then it might damage our friendship. I don't want that. How cheesy of you. Shut up. But I was thinking the same. 550, he muttered, setting the pile aside. If you guys did get together and then had a messy breakup, you might not want to be around me so much, and I'd miss you. I'd miss you too, just a little. Thanks, he said sarcastically, and we both laughed. It's going to be so awkward when I see him now. Yep. How comforting, Lee, I said sarcastically. I smacked his arm. You can't be a little more sympathetic? He shrugged. I don't think you should get together with my brother anyway. It's weird and kind of gross. For you? Yep. I shook my head at him. Lee, there's only 549 here. Oh, damn. He passed me another dollar bill, and I added it to the pile. It was just as well. I was double-checking everything he counted. So your dad is giving you a ride home? I shook my head. He had to taxi Brad's friends to the movies tonight after they left, so he can't. I'll just hitch a ride with someone, since you are ditching me for your new girlfriend. I'm not ditching you. You said it was okay. I asked you first. I laughed. Calm down, I'm just messing with you. Lee rolled his eyes at me. In the end, we counted up $614. Our booth raised the most, which was pretty impressive. That must have been because we didn't have to buy a load of giant teddy bears or hot dogs and buns, but whatever. Lee left with Rachel, while I stayed to help clean up some of the litter with Joel, who was still grumbling about losing his bet with Lee. It's your fault, you know. Really, you owe me $30. Why? If you hadn't made it a smooth booth, guys wouldn't have been lining up in the hope of a quick French kiss, he said, his face and tone innocent. So hand over my $30. I laughed, bumping against his shoulder. Not happening, and it wasn't my fault. Or do you like... Oh my gosh, totally need to know every single detail of my first kiss? I put on a hysterically excited tone, and Joel feigned a look of pure horror. He laughed and bumped me back with his hip. Okay, keep your money. Spare me, please. There was a cough behind us, and we both looked around to see Noah raising an eyebrow at me. His quick look at Joel told him to back off. Joel turned to pick up some cotton candy sticks and hot dog wrappers. Crap. What do I do now? What was he even doing here? Noah jerked his head, and Joel gave me a little shove to follow him. I shot him a helpless look, but he was already heading over to join some of the others. I followed Noah towards the parking lot. There were wrappers and labels strewn everywhere, along with bits of food that the seagulls hadn't picked up yet. Lee said you were stuck for a ride, so I should come pick you up. Why? Why was my best friend such a guy sometimes? Of course, he probably thought he was doing me a favor somehow, but seriously? He'd just ignored my mini freakout earlier and told Noah to give me a ride? Sure. What else was I supposed to say? He hadn't mentioned a kiss yet. Was that a good thing or not? Wait, you haven't got your bike, have you? No, he chuckled. I took my car since you hated the bike so much. Thank God, I breathed, and heard him chuckle again. Suddenly my heart went all weird. flip-flopping and somersaulting. Probably just nerves. I almost wished he had brought his bike, just so there wouldn't have been any chances for an awkward silence to settle. He led me out through the mostly empty lot to his car, and we both got in. The tension was almost unbearable. I didn't know what to say or how to act now. I'd kissed him, and it had been a pretty intense kiss too. Not even a drunken one. What was I meant to do now? "Do you mind if I stop by my house on the way?" he asked. "My dad bought a video game he thought Brad would like. I'm supposed to give it to you." "Oh, sure," I said, nodding. "No problem." "Okay." After another couple of minutes, he asked, "So how much did your booth raise in the end?" $614. He gave a low whistle. "Wow." "I know. We made even more than the hot dog stand." He nodded, and then the silence returned. I nudged the radio volume up a little in an attempt to diffuse the tension. It didn't really work. Everything just felt so weird, strained. I stole a peek at Noah from the corner of my eye. His head was bobbing slightly in time to the music, and the sun hit the left side of his face, throwing shadows over the side closest to me. The kiss probably didn't mean anything to him, I tried telling myself. He was a player. So what was one kiss to him? It was only a kiss. I was probably imagining all the awkwardness and tension in the air, making a big deal out of this because it had been my first kiss. Although he was the one who'd turned it into a French kiss, and afterward he'd looked just as dazed as me. But maybe it was because I was a terrible kisser, and he didn't say anything to save me the embarrassment. My mind was going a mile a minute. I was confused. I was worried. I wanted to kiss him again. "No, that's not going to happen. You won't be kissing Noah again, Rochelle, because he's Noah. He's Lee's big brother. He's the jerk who's responsible for your non-existent love life, and who told you he only sees you as a sister. Remember, you were supposed to be mad at him for being so overprotective and annoying and interfering. You were not meant to be thinking about kissing him. You were mad at him, right?" It didn't really help, telling myself that. I still wanted to kiss him again. The car journey stretched on for what seemed like an eternity, and we weren't even halfway yet. I sighed. I felt him glance over at me, but I was too busy with my internal battle to pay him any attention. I wanted to kiss him again, to reassure myself there hadn't been any fireworks. I told myself. I shouldn't do it, though. I bet he still thought of me as his kid brother's friend, the little girl he grew up with. But what about that time after his and me's party, when we fell off the bed? I was sure there had been something between us, but maybe I was deluding myself. And I was also probably deluding myself that he had been checking me out when he'd walked in on me in my bra. And maybe there was something between us, and we just didn't know it yet. Maybe just one more kiss to prove myself wrong. Or right. Would that really be so bad? No, I couldn't kiss him again. I couldn't do it. Could I? I sighed again as we drove up his street. What was I going to do? We finally pulled up at his house. "I'll come in and get the game for Brad," I said. "I'll walk from here." The truth was, I didn't want to spend any longer of him in this car than I had to. Sure, whatever. We got out and I followed him into the kitchen and hung around near the doorway while he rifled through a pile of papers on the counter, biting my lip nervously. He turned around with a new Mario game and handed it to me. He wasn't even a whole foot away from me. A couple of inches of air separated us. Before I knew what I was doing, I went up on tiptoe and pressed my lips against Noah's. Immediately I realized what a fool I was being and stepped back, my cheeks burning and my heart racing. Noah looked at me, blinking in shock, it seemed. He stared at me, his expression unreadable. "Oh, God," I babbled hastily, feeling beyond humiliated. "I'm sorry. It's just... Oh, man, Noah took a stride forward and shut me up very effectively by crushing his lips against mine. Any resistance and tension went gushing out of my body, whether from shock or something else, I wasn't sure, and my arms curled around Noah's neck. I forgot what a fool I'd just made of myself and kissed him back. His hands were on my back and in my hair, squashing me against him so it seemed like every inch of our bodies was touching. And for the record, there were definitely fireworks of some kind going on. Hands on my hips, he lifted me up onto the kitchen counter, so my legs were either side of him. He moved on to kissing my neck, and that was when my head began to clear a little, and I realized just exactly what we were doing here. "Noah, we can't do this," I said breathlessly, shakily. He sighed, stepping back and running his hand through his hair. I had no idea what he was thinking. His expression was indefinable. He met my eyes again, and I got the feeling he wanted an explanation. I'm not going to just be another girl you sleep with and don't call back in the morning," I said, sticking my chin out. "I'm not risking my friendship with Lee just for that." Noah looked at me for a long moment. "That's what you think I'd do? Really?" Well, I trailed off. "Wasn't it?" He came closer, so there were only a couple of inches between us. If I could have moved back, I would have, but I was still sat on the counter. "Let's get something straight here," he said quietly and firmly. "Two things. First off, do you have any idea how many girls I'll kiss at a party who, the next day, claim they've slept with me? And second, despite what all those girls think, they never actually want to date me? They say they do, but think about it. Who wants a serious relationship with someone who has a reputation for getting into fights or just a fling?" I studied his face and quickly decided he was totally serious. Noah could be a jerk, sure, but he was never big on lying. I saw his point. Even if girls didn't want anything long-term, they might not mind just having a fling with a hot guy with a history of violence. I had always thought it kind of weird how so many girls said they'd slept with him when it had looked like he'd spent the night alone. Lee and I had never really wanted to question it too much, though. "You see my point, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, but you'd never do something to a girl. You are not like that." "Yes, but that doesn't seem to factor into it for them. So hang on. What are you trying to say here?" I said, putting my hands up, palms out, and feeling more than a little confused. "It's not your fault you are a player, or at least that you've got a reputation as one." "Right. And," I prompted. He bit his lip. Did Noah Flynn actually look nervous? No, I had to be imagining it. The only time I'd seen him looking like this was when I caught him in those Superman boxers and made him blush. "I just mean," he said slowly, looking down at the counter rather than at me, "that I wouldn't treat you like dirt, as you seem to think I would." "I still don't know what you are trying to say, Noah." "I don't either," he said, with a sudden chuckle, rubbing a hand over his face. "But—" He came closer still. Now there was about an inch between us, and his hands were resting on my thighs. My breathing suddenly turned shallow, my heart pounding in my rib cage. I do know I want to kiss you again. Part of me wanted to say no, to push him firmly away. I wasn't going to risk my friendship with Lee just to carry on kissing Noah. Besides, I couldn't really see us as a couple. Not to mention, I was hardly the kind of girl to be randomly kissing boys. I was the hopeless romantic. Or I thought I was, anyway. But when Noah lowered his head slowly to mine, giving me plenty of time to shove him away, I didn't. Instead, I let him put his lips against mine, kissing him for the 3rd time today. I was making out with Noah Flynn, of all people. Just this morning I'd never even kissed a boy. Noah wrapped my legs around his waist, and I put my arms around his neck, toying with the hair at the nape of his neck. I suddenly couldn't get enough of him. His taste, his touch. I couldn't understand why he had such an effect on me. He lifted me off the counter, carrying me out of the kitchen. I really wasn't sure if this was a good idea, but the feeling of his lips on mine clouded my mind, and I couldn't focus long enough to think it through. It wasn't until we both fell onto something soft and springy, a mattress, that my dormant consciousness seemed to wake up. "Noah," I said, trying to pull away. I knew where this was leading now. "Noah." "Yeah?" he murmured, and started nibbling on my earlobe. It sent sparks all through my body, and for a second I forgot what I was saying. "We can't. I'm not." He drew back only far enough to look me in the eye. I still couldn't remember what I was about to say. He seemed to understand, though, since his eyes went wide, and he said, "Oh, no. I didn't mean for you to, I wasn't. I can't do this," I stammered. I wrinkled away, standing up, making my way to the bedroom door and straightening my top. I couldn't think straight when I was that close to him. I had to get out of here, think it through properly. A hand on my arm pulled me back, and another hand moved past my head to shut the door. Noah was pressed right against me. I had no space at all. The door at my back, the handle digging into me, and Noah in front of me. "Noah," I said firmly, "I'm not going to do this. Nothing is going to happen between us because we just don't go together. All we do is argue. You scare guys away from me, and I'm not some plaything you can just use when it's convenient. Got it, that?" Noah sighed softly, his breath blowing on my face. It still smelled and tasted of spearmint and cotton candy. "I never thought you were something to use when it's convenient," he mumbled, looking me in the eye. "Okay, but tell me honestly, would you date me, Mr. Player?" He sighed again, leaning his forehead against mine. "You tell me." I groaned in frustration. "You are not making this any easier, Noah. We argue, and you are such a jerk. Not to mention, you are Lee's big brother. But? Humiliating as it was, I blurted. "But I felt something when we kissed. I don't know what the hell to do. But I'm not going to make out with you if we are just hooking up." "You want the truth then, Elle?" Noah was starting to sound really frustrated now, and his eyes were level with mine. "You are the one girl who is herself around me, and I like that. But the fact that you don't want me back is sending me crazy. You are the only girl who didn't fall at my feet, and it is driving me insane. I haven't so much as looked at anyone else because of you. Did you know that? You are all I can think about." "Whoa. Okay." So it wasn't like he'd just confessed he loved me and had done for years. But hell, who would have guessed that I, Rochelle Evans, the girl with no experience whatsoever in the boy department, would be the one to drive Noah Flynn crazy? I was stunned. And how long have you felt this? Just out of curiosity. He shrugged. A couple of months. I nodded, trying desperately to appear steady and collected. I thought you said you saw me as a little sister. That was until you grew up, he said simply. Then I made you blush. I ignored him. If that's true, why did you tell me I was like a sister to you? He averted his eyes. You didn't want me back. I'm not the kind of guy to tell someone what I'm actually feeling. You know that. You know this whole conversation is torture to me. I smirked slightly, then blurted, I wanted you. Believe me. He looked like he just won $1 million or something. He tilted his head so his lips brushed against mine. I don't want you to think that I'm only interested in one thing here, okay? I'm not. That's one of the things I like about you. You are sweet and innocent. Different. It's cute. You think I'm cute now, too? I raised an eyebrow, and he smirked against my lips. And here I was thinking I was just your kid brother's annoying best friend. Well, that too. I giggled and traced a finger across his chest. Then he said again, I'm not just interested in you for that, okay? If you were, I'd seriously question your judgment, I mumbled, making him chuckle. But I suddenly felt warm inside. He placed a finger under my chin, tilting my face up. The look on his face, the crease in his forehead. He looked conscious more than anything else. I wouldn't think of him as Lee's brother, or as that jerk who could be too protective of me. I refused to let all the horrible repercussions of the situation enter my mind. Plenty of time for those later. Right now, he was just Noah, and I leaned up to kiss him. And naturally, with me being so inexperienced, I clashed teeth with him. I never thought people actually did that. Go figure, I could manage it. Sorry, I muttered, biting the inside of my cheek. His lips tweaked up against mine. I felt his chest reverberating with suppressed chuckles under my hand. Practice makes perfect, and this time we didn't lock teeth. We stayed on his bed, making out for ages. We talked a little about school, about where he was applying to college. He was thinking of going to San Diego since it was closest, and had a minor argument about how All-Time Low were so much better than Linkin Park. Noah was a big fan of Linkin Park's newer music, while I hated them. I found I was actually enjoying being with Noah, even when we weren't making out. I actually liked his company, even when we argued over music. But we didn't talk for more than a few minutes at a time before he started kissing me again. And when that happened, I forgot what we'd just been talking about. Forgot that I really should have left by now. I just got caught up in the way that his kisses made my stomach fill with wild butterflies. It was just that he was a good kisser, I told myself. I mean, it's not like we had a connection or anything. We were far too different for that. There was no guarantee that he'd still want to be with me in a week or so, when he'd never been in a long-term relationship. So what exactly, he said after a while, propping his elbows behind his head and looking me in the eye, are we doing here? I'm not just going to hook up with you I replied firmly. I told you, he sighed, touching my knee. That's not all I'm interested in. I shouldn't like him. I couldn't like him. We were too different. This was too wrong. Not to mention how I could ever face up to Lee and tell him I was with his brother. But I enjoyed being with him like this. I liked the way it felt to kiss him, the feel of his arms around me, the smile in his eyes when we argued over bands. It felt nice to be like this with Noah, like it was natural. Was that worth hurting Lee for, though? I couldn't do that to him, could I? He'd already made it clear that it'd be weird for him, that it could potentially damage our friendship, and nothing could be worth that, right? I don't know, I admitted after a while. It's just, we shouldn't, and Lee. I see. Noah was quiet for a moment. His fingertip traced circles on my knee, and I watched the movement, waiting. He spoke hastily. Well, maybe Lee doesn't have to know. I let that sink in a moment. You mean I should lie to him? Maybe just not tell him the whole truth. His mouth twisted a little, like he was struggling to word it properly. Until we figure out what to do. I nodded. If Lee didn't know, it wouldn't hurt him. If things didn't work out between Noah and me, then Lee would be none the wiser, and things could stay as they were between us. And if things did work out with Noah, then I'd cross that bridge and tell Lee when I came to it. I heard him sigh, and I looked up. He gave me a weary smile. I told you girls didn't want to be with a guy who's got a history of punching things. I've shoved his arms lightly. It's not that. And besides, I know you'd never lay a finger on a girl. You are not like that. And before I could think about it any more, I said, Okay. Okay? But just promise me you won't let Lee find out. Noah nodded. Of course I won't. Then he sat up and leaned forward far enough to kiss my nose. Smiling, I moved my head so I could kiss him on the lips instead. I felt his lips curve up against mine, and when we pulled apart, there was that dimple in his left cheek that only appeared when he smiled. Then I looked past him and saw the time, glaring at me in red from his digital alarm clock. I gasped. I had to be home for dinner in 20 minutes. Where had the afternoon gone? I should get going, I said urgently. Oh, if I didn't know better, I might have thought he was disappointed. Do you need a ride home? I turned to raise my eyebrows at him. I can walk. I have legs. 2 of them, actually. He smirked. Have it your way, then. I was just trying to be nice. It's okay, really. I wanted to clear my mind a little, and this would not happen if Noah was with me. You are cute when you look like that, I told him, nodding at his expression. He grimaced. Don't call me cute, please. Aw, how cute, I teased, laughing. I shoved at his shoulder playfully, a gesture which he returned with an eye roll. I went to pick up my cell phone from the dresser next to his bed, and blurted out a question before I could help myself. Do you hate people calling you Noah? I asked. Noah's not exactly the coolest name in the book. You can't imagine some guy running in terror at the name Noah. Flynn's just... It suits you. Exactly. So why do you always call me by my first name? 'Cause I grew up with you. Then I did it to annoy you. But it's kind of hot. The words had come out before I realized what I was saying. My mouth snapped shut and my cheeks flamed as I held a hand over my mouth. I couldn't believe I just said that. I mean, I did think Noah was a hot name. Maybe not on some people. But Noah Flynn pulled it off. He made it sexy. I just couldn't believe I'd told him that. He smirked, pulling my hand away from my undoubtedly beetroot-colored face. Well, when you put it like that, it doesn't seem so bad. I gave an embarrassed laugh, and he gave me a quick peck on the lips before letting my hand go. I needed to get going now, and if someone came home unexpectedly, it was bound to look more than a little suspicious that I was here with Noah. They'd hardly believe we were just hanging out. I detoured to the kitchen on my way out to grab my purse and the video game for Brad. When I turned around and saw Noah leaning in the open doorway, it made me jump. He hadn't made a sound. I'd had no idea he was there. "Are you free tomorrow?" he asked me. "I don't think so. I have a ton of homework I have to do, so..." Only after I'd said that did I think maybe I should have tried to be more mysterious, ask what he had in mind, tell him I might or might not be available. But I waved away the notion immediately, as if I could pull that off. "That sucks." I waited for him to expand on that, but he didn't. He just gave me that infamous trademark smirk, and his bright eyes bored into mine. I wondered if that meant he wanted to meet up with me, but he didn't say anything more. I said quietly. He grinned. "I'll find somewhere out of the way to meet you, don't worry." I smiled back at him. In just one day, I'd gone from having no love life to what I could only call sneaking around with the most desirable guy in school, all because of that damn kissing booth. "Bye," I said quietly, brushing past him to get to the front door. "Hey, hold up," he said, tugging me back by the belt hook of my jeans. "I want my goodbye kiss." No. Wow, that may have just been the flirtiest thing I've said today. Go me. No. He raised his dark eyebrows challengingly. He bent to kiss me anyway, and I was going to kiss him back, but he pulled away after barely brushing his lips to mine. He gave me an innocent look, at which I rolled my eyes. "Bye, Shelley," he called teasingly after me. "Bye, Noah," I replied in the same tone, smiling to myself. I didn't stop smiling the whole way home. That night I lay in bed thinking about it all. I had no way of knowing for sure how long this would last. I'd always thought of myself as the kind of girl who would be in more long-term committed relationships. From what I'd heard, Noah's longest relationship had been maybe a week. But I couldn't help it. I didn't want to hurt Lee. But I felt an attraction to Noah that wasn't only something physical. Not that I would do anything so stupid as to fall for him. Nope, no way. If anything could damage my relationship with Lee, it was that. It wouldn't happen. It couldn't happen. I wouldn't let it. I just had to try and deal with this whole thing the best way I could. And if that meant hiding the fact that Noah and I were together, then so be it. I didn't want to not be with him. Just the thought of this afternoon made me feel warm inside. I'm pretty sure I fell asleep smiling.